Gen X dad story. So, turn hot and humid here in the Motor City. Windows down weather, which means obviously my neighbors want to hear my music. And I've been, I'm not sure why, but I just started blasting the old Beastie Boys, Cookie Puss, and No Sleep Till Brooklyn. I'm sure they were all happy. So I was in a good mood, thinking back to the 80s. We were all fronting and stealing, rhyming and stealing, fronting. And then all of a sudden I thought, dang, MCA died in his 40s. He's been dead like a decade. That brought me down. You know what? The lesson there is, we don't know how much time we got. Share your gifts. Whatever gifts you got, share them. All right, son, you ready?
I'm ready to go.
Hello, welcome to Hard Compound, an American take on Formula One. We just finished watching the British Grand Prix, Silverstone. That turned into a very fun race. More battles than we've seen in a while. We had 2 Brits on the podium. First time, I believe, since 1999, if Sky has their stats correct. That has to be McLaren's best finish in a decade. And they were woeful in the mid-2000s. And second and fourth, that was pretty good. Max being Max. I'm sure that Dutch national anthem is playing in Total Wolf's sleep. Patrick, son, let me get your take on Silverstone, British Grand Prix 2023.
Yeah, this is like the one track, it seems like, where home field advantage really plays a part. I mean, that's 3 Brits in the top 5. You like to count Albon as a member of or a British national, I should say. He got up well into the top 10 for that Williams team. I mean, just all around great performances for British drivers, British teams. It was an exciting race, lots of action, especially at the start, and then near the end with the safety car restart. Just lots of stuff going on, lots of fun drives. Some teams moving up in the standings, some teams looking like they're moving backwards, but all around a really fun weekend.
Now, before I get your top 5 for Silverstone, last week we gave our ranking of the top British drivers. How about we include Albon in that, and let's give a revised list, because I just want to give my list. And so I'm going to put, because I just think, given his age, what we've seen from him, I'm going to put Lando now ahead of Lewis. I know this is recency bias, but I'm putting Lando ahead of Lewis. Then I have Lewis, Lando Norris, Lewis Hamilton. Who do we have next? George Russell and Alex Albon. I have long thought George Russell was going to eclipse Lewis. I mean, he outscored him last year. I thought he was the future for Mercedes, but he's struggling a wee bit against Lewis this year. And when you look at what car he's driving, look at what Albon is doing week in, week out. I'm now going to put Albon third, then George Lewis. What about you?
I don't know. Our rankings last week were it's hard to rank these drivers, I guess, based on the cars that they're in. We can sort of directly compare Lewis and George, but it's a little bit more difficult with Lando and Albon. I have believed that Lando has been a better driver than Russell in Formula One in both of their careers. I like I still like how Lewis drives. So I'm gonna keep Hamilton atop, and then have Lando. And I think it's a tough decision between Albon and George Russell based on their performances thus far in 2023. Um, I I would keep Russell ahead just by a slim margin. I think all of these drivers are exceptionally talented and certainly deserve to continue to be in Formula One. But I mean, yeah, what Albon's been able to achieve in the Williams this year is really remarkable.
I think, look out for Williams in 2024. Finally, after a couple decades practically of futility, Logan Sargeant, I believe, came in 11th.
Yeah.
Albon is putting in great races every week. I think he's a rookie. His seat is safe. Albon, they've got signed, I think, until 2025. They've been doing well. They've been improving. I think they've certainly been improving more and more consistently than Alfa Romeo, Alfa Tauri, Haas. That's going to be fun watching Albon and Logan next year compete for points every race. So I think that's a good story that I think this race confirmed for us. It also confirmed, I think, what a amazing driver lineup McLaren has. We've been tough on Zach Brown. He's been great at getting amazing drivers under contract for F1 and his Indy team. He's been great at bringing in sponsors, but they're still not a true constructor. They're still middle of the pack, week in, week out. He's been there a few years now. They've never really been a threat for a top three, but I'm going to give him credit for signing this driver lineup. Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri, both young drivers and both great drivers.
Yeah, for sure. I think both of them proved that this week. They've been sticking to it through the rough sort of first half of the season for McLaren. But I mean, they might have, the best driver lineup on the grid next season. Once Oscar Piastri has one full Formula One season under his belt, and obviously Lando's been able to accomplish a lot in his short career. So yeah, an awesome team. They're fun to watch. If McLaren actually, has a car that can compete near the top with those other 3-4 teams, that's a really exciting prospect.
I want to come back to the what you think might be the top teams later, but speaking of top cars, I mean, Ferrari have a top lineup: Charles Leclerc, Carlos Sainz. They have what we know is a good car. They finished, what was it, 9th and 10th, something like that today. I mean, this team needs a complete overhaul. You can't just regularly underperform and think it's coincidental. I mean, they are regularly underperforming, and so I'm not sure what to do there. What changes need to be made? I'm starting to wonder if Charles is not helping. I've always liked him, and he's clearly got talent. But this is a team that just sort of regularly underperforms in a car that should be overperforming.
Yeah, Ferrari's sort of a continual disappointment. They this track was very interesting. It seemed like a lot of teams had very similar pace, so their cars sort of performed on the whole very similarly. There were a few decisions regarding tires, pit stops, and when they came, especially in regards to the safety car, that I think bogged down both Ferrari drivers, right? Mercedes seemed to take full advantage of it. Same with McLaren to stay up at the top in that top five. Both Ferrari drivers um, after that safety car were down in like 10th and 11th or something like that. So, they kind of screwed themselves. Um, and then weren't on the optimal tire either. So their ending positions, I think, were a little bit misconstrued. Um, but that's ultimately on the team as a whole. Everyone makes those decisions, and where you finish, it's a lot of it has to do with the team and the management.
Yeah, so the top five finishers were Max, Lando, Lewis, Oscar, and George. So Red Bull, one from Red Bull, two for Mercedes, two for McLaren. What is your top five though? What if you could go by driver? What do you have as your top five?
Yeah, my top five. I think similarly to a lot of people, I had Lando as my top driver of the weekend, the day. Um, he was excellent in that McLaren. Great qualifying. Was so nearly a pole sitter. Um, then took the fight to Max off the line in the race. Um, led a few laps there, and then was able to hold off any potential challenges throughout the rest of the race. So awesome, awesome drive from Lando. Um, then I have Max uh, once again making everything look easy and comfortable. He almost, he wants to lead every lap of every race for sure. But even when he's, beaten off the line or whatever and kind of has to bide his time behind somebody else, he looks very comfortable doing that. He sort of knows he has the pace, um, takes his time, makes sure he gets past anybody cleanly, so that he can ultimately finish the race in first place, as he did. Once again, quite a ways ahead of his teammate, Sergio Perez. Then third, I have the other McLaren driver, Oscar Piastri. So far, he's been the best rookie this season. He looks very comfortable after this weekend in that car and sort of up there at the top. He was fighting with both the Mercedes drivers. He looked like he had just as much pace as his teammate Lando Norris. Really, really good to see from him in that car.
Yeah, I don't think Oscar is a Max Verstappen level talent, but this is his first season in F1. What, 10th race, 10 races, one was canceled. He's I think 19. This is pretty remarkable. He's definitely a great driver.
Yeah, for sure. Really, really fun and exciting to see from him. Um, I think next I have Alex Albon. Again, a really solid performance from him. That Williams is going, pretty well, especially compared to the teams that we normally see Williams fighting with: Haas, Alfa Romeo, AlphaTauri. Um, that Williams is looking like the best of that bunch currently. And Albon, finishing ahead of two Ferraris, and only just behind Fernando Alonso, I think is pretty impressive. Um, and his teammate not too far behind there either. So the Williams team looking pretty strong. I think they're on 11 points as a constructor, so just as much as Haas and ahead of Alfa Romeo and AlphaTauri as well. So And then to round out my top five, this was a bit of a tough one. I think there were a few drivers to pick from, but I had the final podium finisher, Lewis Hamilton. I think a really good race for him in his home race. They were pretty disappointing, Mercedes, last week in Austria, and really came back, took it to Ferrari. Um, Hamilton was pretty lucky with his tire strategy and sort of the timing of his pit stops, but he really um, showed a good drive. It was a sort of a veteran drive, holding on to his tires as best he could, and finishing on the podium.
Nice. So Lando, Max, Oscar, Albon, and Lewis is your top five at Silverstone. I cannot argue with that. Do you have a best surprise favorite act that happened during the race?
No, I don't know if there was like a best surprise. I think Oscar finishing up there in fourth, and I think he qualified in third. So just seeing really good performance from him, as well as a really nice performance from Logan Sargeant. So two of the rookie drivers out there with really good weekends overall for their teams. I think they're showing improvement and sort of a level of comfort in the cars that are under them now, which I think is a good thing moving forward for both of them. So I think it was overall really good to see.
Yeah, that would probably be my best surprise, was just seeing how well Oscar and Logan, two of the three rookies in F1, performed this week. Also, I would add just the fact that Max is Max and Red Bull has the dominant car, but really second through eighth were regularly under question. Those were competitive throughout.
Yeah.
And so that was really great to see. Any like biggest disappointment or any disappointments in this race?
Um, yeah, I mean, I think there were a few things that were disappointing about the race. I think Ferrari, is sort of regularly disappointing in their strategy or decision making. They regularly sort of question um, what they should be doing, and I think that really hurts them. And it did again this weekend, and they lost out quite a few points to Mercedes. I think just due to lackadaisical decision making, and which was pretty disappointing. But then, in addition to that, we had a few DNFs, double DNF for Alpine, and then a DNF for Haas. Kevin Magnussen and Hulkenberg really was bogged down basically the entire race, got no points. So those two teams, I think, were pretty disappointing on the whole.
Yeah, for me, my biggest disappointment were really, two of my favorite drivers, Alonso and Hulkenberg. Alonso has been doing his black magic all season, and we sort of knew it couldn't continue. But the state of the Aston car and the ongoing upgrades and superior updates made by other teams really is putting Alonso in a tough position. I know he loves to battle. If he can't win, he wants to fight. But, I think we can't honestly claim that the Aston that car is any better than the fifth best car in the grid. And so, that's tough to watch him in the mid-pack car. And I think you can make the case that it's maybe the sixth best car after Red Bull, Mercedes, Ferrari, McLaren, Alpine. We'll see as the season goes on and what upgrades all the teams bring. And then again, Hulkenberg has just been driving great, I think, this year. They brought him back. It's a solid team, him and Magnussen, but that Haas is garbage. And really, you know, Gunther's shtick, I think, has run its course. You know, he mugs for the cameras. He loves to make provocative statements. All the Drive to Survive fans love him. But he's been running that team almost for a decade now. It's the new team, but it's been there for almost a decade now. And, you know, it's just, and, you know, second year of a spending cap, new regulations. This is, you know, there really aren't any excuses anymore for how consistently bad that car is.
Yeah.
So I would add that as my biggest disappointment. Who do you have on the virtual podium, Patrick?
The virtual podium. I saw a statement from the president of the FIA, who's been, you know, regularly kind of taking calls and meetings with Formula One teams and presidents and things like that, to discuss how to change the rules so that Red Bull isn't so good. And he basically came out with a blanket statement and said, just get better. We're not going to change the rules to punish a team or a driver for doing a good job. And I thought that was nice to hear, right? Like it's so kind of frustrating. I get that people are fans of, you know, certain teams or certain drivers, and it can be a little bit annoying to watch one guy dominate and just constantly win. I get it. But you really want everyone else to step up and be better, right? You don't want to just hold one guy back. So I appreciated that he kind of came out and said, like, yeah, we're not making any changes. Don't get your hopes up. Just be better.
Yeah, you know, that's a great one, because, you know, I could see FIA wanting to change rules if they felt a team brought something to the track that maybe was unsafe or unsustainable that not every team could do, or it went so far outside the spirit of the regulations that they felt they had no choice but to make a change. But that's not the case here. Max is the best driver on the grid, and Red Bull have the best car, and, you know, it's all within the rules, the regulations, and within the spirit of them.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's great. I'm not even going to offer up mine because I think that's such a worthy admission to the virtual podium. All right, switching to the soft compound, Patrick. I want us to give our rankings of the top teams because we are now almost halfway through the season. Teams have brought multiple upgrades. The lineups are solid. We know what the cars can do. I think it's time to give our top 10, our top teams list. I am going to go first, Patrick. I'll give you time to come up with your list. Oh, I'm sorry. I don't mean cars. I mean driver pairings. Yes. Let's do that. Driver pairings. Who do we think has the best driver team? Okay.
Yeah.
And you said you think next year McLaren could be the best. I'm going to say McLaren right now. Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri, the two young guns. Okay. You know, right. like Point Break, you know, young, dumb,
I like it.
calm. I think this is the top team now. And I love it. I want to see some swagger from these guys. I know they're both very tiny, so it might look silly, but I want to see that swagger.
I want to see like 30 pounds of gold chains on their necks.
Exactly. All right. Next, I have Ferrari up here with Leclerc and Sainz, but I'm not sure now. They have been underperforming for so long that I am no longer firm in my belief that it's engineering, strategy, management, and other factors. But for now, I've got Ferrari as the second best driver pairing. Third, Red Bull. And that's just because Max is Max. He's the best driver on the grid. And so I've got them third. Controversially, my fourth pick, I had two teams tied. Alpine with Gasly and Ocon, and Mercedes with Lewis and George. I believe Lewis has lost a touch. He's still great, but he's lost a bit. And I think George, I'm reassessing George, and he might not have the greatness that I once thought he did. I'm next, as much as I do not like the car, I have to go with Haas. Hulkenberg and Magnussen, that's a solid veteran team. Then we're going to go with Aston Martin because they've got Fernando Alonso, who, even though he's lost a bit, he's still great. Lance Stroll, I would not mind if he was replaced, but he's fair. Then we're going to go with Williams. I think next year this list will have Williams 1, 2, maybe even 3 places higher. They've got Albon and the rookie Logan Sargeant. 9 and 10 are an afterthought. Alpha with Bottas and Zhou. Alpha Tauri with Yuki and DeVry. All right, there you go. Top driver pairings.
That is an interesting list. And can be a little... It's interesting.
Do you have... I know I sprang that on you. Do you have a top 10 list you want to provide us?
Yeah, but I mean, I'll probably think about it after we finish recording and be like, oh, I should have put somebody else somewhere else. But I'll, off the bat, let's see. Perhaps compared to you, somewhat controversially, I have Mercedes. Lewis Hamilton is exceptional. I think he's still great. He's not in his prime, and I think he maybe is getting a little bit more frustrated with not winning. But, the talent is still there. The experience is still there. And, he got on the podium again this week. And then George, really solid driver. I think he's a prick, but he drives well. I think as a pairing, that's currently the best pair of drivers on the grid.
Nice. I think had you asked me the start of the year, I probably would have said the same. But I think Lewis has lost a bit more than I had expected. George is a bit less than I thought. So that's where we disagree. But, I think most people probably would go with your selection there with Mercedes. And you never know. Next year, I mean, as we said, Max is Max and Red Bull has the dominant car. But Mercedes keep improving. They've got now, I think, they'll, if not by next week, or next race, within 2 races, I think Lewis will pass Alonso in points. I think Mercedes will sort of firmly lock themselves into second in the constructors. So next year, they'll be fighting for not just podiums, but wins. So, all right. Who do you have number 2, Patrick?
I have McLaren. I like Lando. I think he's one of the top drivers on the grid. Oscar is really solid rookie. I think he's had some really, really good performances. And, I'm excited to see what he will be able to accomplish in the next couple of seasons. He looks really good, though. Then I have a tough pick, but I think I'm going with Red Bull. Max is unbelievable. He's dominant. Perez is adequate. I would say I think Perez is just as good, if not better, than like a Hulkenberg. So I think in combination with Max, that's a great pairing. Then I would have to say Ferrari. I think both drivers are extremely talented. Um, they have moments of brilliance, and each of them can sort of defend and attack really well. They, I just don't think either one is really all that consistent. Um, and that I think is really tough sometimes, because if both of them were consistent, if Ferrari got their uh sort of strategy and I don't know, everything aligned, they could be a top team. But it's just kind of, I don't know, they seem so Italian and nonchalant, and like everything is kind of all over the place and chaotic all the time, which is frustrating. Uh, but I think, yeah, overall, probably fourth best driver pairing on the grid. Then I have Alpine. Two really solid drivers, a couple of race winners. Um, Alpine has a really strong lineup and a really poor car. But yeah, I think both of those French drivers, really solid, talented, and can do great things on any given day.
Interesting, because we have the same in the top 5: Mercedes, McLaren, Red Bull, Ferrari, Alpine. I think the big difference there is I have Mercedes in fourth, tied for fourth, and you have them first. But yeah, that's interesting. So we have the same. I sprang this on you, and we have the same teams overall in the top 5. So what about your 6 through 10?
Sixth, I have Williams. I think Albon is great, and Sargeant. I just want him to be awesome. But I think he's had some good performances, and looks like, maybe he's getting more comfortable in the car. So I'm going to put them there ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
Ahead of Aston, which now that I think about it, maybe is kind of ridiculous, but I don't know. I'm gonna stick with it for now and say,
well, I had Aston just ahead of Williams. So but Williams, Albon continues to improve. Remember, Red Bull let him go, and I think that was the right decision. He just, at that time, in that early stage of his career, he wasn't ready to hang with that team and against Max. But they did right by Albon. They knew he was talented. They kept him, I think, as a reserve driver, working on the sim, and then they helped, get him a contract at Williams. So he's great. Sargeant, obviously we want the best for him. He's the only actual American on the grid. And again, he's only been in 10 F1 races and in a car that's not very good. So, that's a trial by fire that I think he's surviving.
For sure. And yeah, Aston, I don't know. Alonso is incredible. He's a lot of fun to watch. He's, extremely capable, wily veteran. Stroll, I think, can have really good performances, but on the whole, I think he's either slow or hits people. And so I think that's maybe the shortcoming on that team. After that, I have Haas. Like you said, both of these drivers, Hülkenberg and Magnussen, are solid veteran drivers, but I don't foresee either one of them ever really like winning a race or coming all that close to a podium. But I think in terms of like what that team needs, they're solid for it. And then, like you, the two alpha teams, like nobody cares about. It really doesn't matter what order you put them in. So,
Yuki's fun with AlphaTauri, but he's not shown me anything more than him, as kind of a middling driver after 3-ish years in F1. Bottas is a solid veteran, so probably the exact sort of presence that they need at Alfa Romeo, but they're not great and they're in bad cars.
yeah.
So, all right, let's ask the stewards, Patrick. There was a minor pre-race controversy. An attractive model, I do not know her name or what she has done before, but on Martin's grid walk, she snubbed him. He repeatedly tried to have an interview with her, and she snubbed him. Her team snubbed him. Everyone was outraged. I was not outraged. I know if you're on the grid, you really should be available to speak with Martin, if possible. And I don't like rudeness. I really do not like rudeness. But, we're human. If you don't want to talk to somebody, you shouldn't have to talk with them. And we should all go on. Did you see that or have any thoughts on that?
I did not see that.
Okay.
And I don't know that I really have any thoughts about it. I think it's at some point, I think like if you're on the grid, you probably ought to know who Martin Brundle is. But yeah, I think, for me, I don't know if I love Martin Brundle's grid walks. I do love them. I think they're cool, but I'm the type of person that hates talking to other people or hates being interviewed. So like I kind of understand it if somebody just walks up to you and shoves a microphone in your face. You might be like not super interested in talking to them. So
right, I'm the same way. I think it's an expectation if you get a grid pass on race day and Martin comes up to you, or it could be sometimes Will Buxton, for example, you're supposed to talk with them. But I don't think we should be outraged if the person does not wish to do that. Speaking of outrage, our British compatriots, the F1 media, they love to complain.
yes,
They love to complain so much that they complain about everything. So their big complaint this past week was that F1 announced next year's race schedule, and there will be 24 races. That's 2 races a month. And all of them complained loudly that that was far too much. I, again, disagree with the British media. What is your opinion on next year's race schedule, Patrick? 24 races in total.
I have no problem with 24 races in total. I think if they so desperately want to cut races or have fewer races, then like have fewer European and Middle Eastern races. There's like 15 of them are in that region of the world. It's like, okay, well, fine. Decide which ones to get rid of. I think all of them are just upset that there's more American races. You're like, oh, that's too many there, right? It's like, well, I don't know. Stop complaining. It's dumb and useless. The schedule is the schedule, okay?
Across the line, that's our segment where we predict the top 5 finishers of the next race. The next race is in 2 weeks in Hungary. If we are correct in our prediction, that's 1 point per driver. If we get them in the exact spot that they actually finish in, that's 3 points. We get 3 points each. 3 points if we get them in the exact spot, 1 point if they finish in the top 5.
Yes.
And you would think years into this, I would be able to convey how across the line works. I am not, though. What are the current standings, Patrick?
Well, we both did pretty poorly this week, but you eked out a little bit more of an advantage. So you are ahead 40 points to 31 for me.
Nice. That is a Max Verstappen over Sergio Perez lead, I think, Patrick.
Hey,
So
I'm coming in second at least, okay? So
nice, nice. The next race, 2 weeks in Hungary. McLaren, I think, have tied. I'm sorry, Red Bull have tied McLaren for most consecutive wins at 11. If they win in Hungary, if I have this information correctly, that puts them 12 races in a row, 12 wins in a row, which gives them the record. And Max won there last year, although he had to fight off George and Lewis for the victory. We'll see. We'll see what happens. What do you think, Patrick? Give me who starts this week for
you have first pick.
Okay, nice, nice. This was such a good showing from McLaren this week, but also from Lewis Hamilton. I remain a little suspicious about what McLaren can do. And last year at Hungary, Lewis and Mercedes did quite well. I am going to go with Lewis Hamilton takes the win. He isn't number one.
Wow. That'd be special for Lewis. I think for me, since I have to gain a little ground, I'll take the obvious pick and take Max Verstappen. But then, I really like their performance this week. Those upgrades look good at Silverstone and look like they can continue to be good in Hungary. So I will take Lando Norris.
Nice. I just can't believe Sergio will continue to so badly underperform. So I'm going to go with Sergio Perez at number 2 and the wily old veteran Alonso at 3.
Oh, wow. Nice. That'd be good if he got back up into the podium. I mean, that Aston, like you mentioned earlier, has looked like it's starting to get overtaken by a couple of the other teams. So
yeah, and it's funny. I just realized I got Lewis, Sergio, and Alonso on the podium, and I wonder if that would be the oldest podium in F1 history. I think maybe in the early days they had a couple guys finish who were like in their 40s or something like that. But that would be interesting. I'm curious now.
Yeah, let's see. For me, who do I think is going to be on the podium? I guess I'll go with the other Mercedes driver, George Russell. And then P4, I can't imagine that they'll be so woeful as to not come in the top 5. I'll take Carlos Sainz in the Ferrari.
No, nice. I am going to go with Ferrari also. I'm going to put Leclerc in 4th. And I think Alpine will right some of the many wrongs we've seen this year. And so I'm going to put Gasly in number 5. So I have Lewis Hamilton, Sergio Perez, Fernando Alonso, Charles Leclerc, Pierre Gasly. You have Max Verstappen, Lando Norris, George Russell, Carlos Sainz, and
big P5 finish for Nico Hülkenberg.
Oh, that would be nice. He earns it. The man has earned that. Any crazy predictions for the race or the remainder of the season, Patrick?
Well, I have just an outrageous prediction.
All right, let's hear it.
Mercedes will sign Daniel Ricciardo to fill Lewis Hamilton's spot, who will sign with Red Bull, as Sergio Perez will get ousted at the end of the season.
Oh my God, that would be awesome. That would just be awesome. That would be like McLaren said, you know what? do-over. We're firing Lando and Oscar, and we're going to bring back Lewis and Alonso. That's at that level almost. That would be an awesome one. Mine is sort of the bizarro world opposite of that one. Here's mine. Well, number one, as I just mentioned in my across the line, I don't believe Max will win, and Red Bull will not get the record for most consecutive wins. But my other one, everyone is talking about how Ricciardo is going to be driving and test driving the Red Bull and the AlphaTauri, and all the rumors are that Nick DeVries will get booted mid-season. They won't even give him a full season. That he will get booted, and Ricciardo will replace him. Ricciardo's under contract at Red Bull, and AlphaTauri is a Red Bull car. My crazy prediction is that is entirely wrong, and it exposes a major weakness at Red Bull, because what I think is going to happen is they'll let Daniel drive the AlphaTauri, and it's going to be shown why he got booted and is no longer a driver on the grid. And Nick is a much better driver than him, which will also reveal to everyone that, Red Bull doesn't have a deep lineup. Sergio was able to sort of get that great Red Bull car into second periodically, but that's it. It's all Max. And, everyone says, well, they've got Daniel Ricciardo waiting in the wings. I think Nick DeVries is a better driver. What are they going to do? I think Yuki's a better driver than Ricciardo. Not necessarily in his prime, but now, yes, for sure. So I think my crazy prediction is that Nick stays, and we see just how sort of soft the Red Bull driver lineup is once you set Max aside. All right. I want to remind our listeners, send your questions or comments to hardcompoundpod@gmail.com. We may read them on the show. We definitely will read them. And I wish to thank you all for listening to everybody's most beloved father and son F1 podcast. And we are lights out.
See ya. Thanks for listening.
Hey, good show, son. It looks like Hollywood's gone to F1. They had Brad Pitt there. They were doing some filming. It's funny because I'll watch the movie, I'm sure, and I do like Brad Pitt, but there's that scene in Catcher in the Rye, Holden Caulfield, where he sort of mocks his brother for, he's like writing about something, and Holden was like, he knows nothing about this, and you just know that Apple's backing a movie where the guy is writing about F1. It's sort of like, oh, he watched a few episodes of Drive to Survive, sort of a thing. So,
yeah.
And it's all sort of feel and pose. So I'm hoping I'm wrong, but we'll see. It is kind of exciting, though, that sort of Hollywood has rediscovered Formula One.
Yep.